as Pierangelo said, I'm the digital marketing manager in BMW Ireland, and have fond memories of being an MSDM master's student in DCU Business School. So rather than I kind of took a bit of a different tack. So rather than talking to you about the various campaigns, etc., that I've worked on, I thought as a marketer, I really believe in the power of stories and how they resonate with people on maybe a different level than the campaigns that you have worked on or achievements throughout my career. And so thinking about a story, I'm sure you can all take at least one of the films that you can see on your screen now. And if I were able to ask you, you could tell me, at least with one of them, what the plot was, what the character names were, what transpired throughout that film, even though it might be 2 years ago since you've seen it. And my point here is that stories are powerful, stories matter, and I just want to tell you my story instead of the campaigns that I worked upon. And like any good story, it has an arc. So you start off with the calling, which is like the knight finds out about the princess in the tower and decides to go and rescue her. And the quest is when he takes on all these different lands and challenges and slays the dragon in order to rescue her. And the homecoming then would be all about how he woke her up with true love's kiss, and they ride home with a big white steed back to the kingdom and live happily ever after, of course. So this is my calling. So many moons ago, I was a starving, struggling artist, and I didn't have very much money, and I was a single mom, and I was struggling. I also ran club nights and did lots of different promotions, and ended up somehow in PR. So from PR, it was at quite a lower kind of level, or entry level. So again, it wasn't very lucrative, and I was still struggling a lot for money. And that's when I ended up getting quite sick. So when I got sick, I had no money coming in at all. And it was a real wake-up call. It was the calling for me that I needed to do something different in life. So this lovely picture of me was taken before a very serious operation that I had. And we didn't know how it was all going to go when I got into recovery, whether it was going to go well or not. Thankfully, it all went really, really well. But it spurred me on, it ignited something in me, a passion that I wanted to explore further. I knew from working in PR, there was the digital side of PR, and that was the bit that piqued my interest. So with that, I decided to embark upon my quest, which was to go to DCU and study a master's in digital. So this was 2 months after my operation, by the way. So there I was in DCU Business School building, and I was just full of joy to be able to to have a second chance. And I wanted to take every opportunity I could get. I was so thirsty for knowledge. I was so hungry to take up all the opportunities I possibly could and make the absolute most of that year I spent in DCU. So I went on trips to India. You can see here, there's another one coming. Then we also went to China. And here was a kind of a precursor for maybe me ending up in the automotive industry. And then, of course, I did my thesis with my fantastic workmates, my team. But my point of this quest was it wasn't all fun and games and happiness and travel. It was hard work. I had quite a fear for a performer. It's a bit weird, but I had a big fear of speaking in front of people, particularly in front of peers and in front of our lecturers. And especially when you know they're going to rip you apart for what you've just recommended on the screen. So I had a big fear of that, but what spurred me on all the time was that knowledge that I had been through something much scarier, and I had survived, and I was stronger as a result. So I delved back into that often to get me through the masters. What I also, before we go on to homecoming, what I also realized throughout that year was one, I didn't tell anyone about the operation. I remember getting a smack in the back, being like somebody going, "Hey," and that was where my surgery was, and I was like, "Oh my God!" But I still wouldn't tell anyone because I thought vulnerability was a weakness, when in actual fact, all the way through that course, it had been a strength and it got me through. And also, I found out a lot about myself in terms of my personality. I won the award for MSDM Dictator of the Year. And so I found out that I was very, very bossy and quite decisive. And so these are traits that you need to think about when you're thinking about what you're going to do after your master's. So I identified some strengths and weaknesses throughout that course. And I also realized that I was very much, I'm not really a detailed person. I'm much more of a broad knowledge, master of none kind of person. So I didn't really have a list of all the things I wanted to do. When I was at your stage, nearing the end of the year, when you have so much work to do, but you start thinking a little bit ahead and going, okay, what am I interested in? What am I going to do? In my head, I knew things I didn't want to do. I'd already worked in agencies. I'd worked in town for a long time, and I needed more money. So I knew I did not want to work in an agency anymore. I did not want to work in the city centre, and I needed to increase my wages by about 33%. So I applied for a lot of jobs, and I wasn't getting anywhere as fast as I thought I was going to get, and for as much as I thought I was worth. So I ended up working in an agency in the city centre for less than what I was on before I started the master's. But don't worry, there was just a bit of a curveball on the path. So I didn't give up. I still had the resilience in me from everything I've been through, and to keep applying for jobs. So while I was in that agency, I was working really long hours, working hard for very little, but I kept going, kept applying, didn't give up. And I identified some industries that I was interested in, which was tech and automotive. So eventually I was successful, and 3 months after working in that agency, I got a job working for a large motor group in Dublin. So I got the 33% increase I was after. I was not working in the city centre anymore. They gave me a nice car, and I was happy. So it was really great work. I learned loads while I was there, and specifically around, it was actually stuff that you had learned in the course, where you have to back up what you're recommending to people, and you have to be able to be decisive in your presentation. So I was the only woman in the board, so I often had to I found it that I had to not allow myself to be spoken over. I had to ensure that these people trusted me and thought and believed in me, and I had to believe in myself in order for them to do that. So I learned an awful lot, but while I was there, I started thinking, okay, what else do I want? So being there, I was thinking to myself, okay, I don't want to work in a motor group anymore, in a retailer. I would like to work for a manufacturer. And also, I think I'd really like to work for a luxury manufacturer. So I thought to myself, right, 3 to 5 year plan, that's what I'll do. That's what I'll accomplish. And then luckily enough, BMW job interview came up. And that was after 2 years in the motor group job. And so I went for that interview. I prepared. It was, I have to say myself, it was pretty good. But I arrived, and I arrived with plenty of time in advance, but I opened up my laptop to get up my presentation like 15 minutes before the interview. And I got that little window of updating Windows death. And I was looking at it going, oh my God, no, this can't be happening to me. So 10 minutes go by, and I'm going, Googling, how do I reboot the system? How do I get it to stop doing that? And next thing, the head of marketing from BMW comes over and says, hello, how are you doing? And I was like, oh man, I've done better. Actually, I've been better. This has just happened. So anyway, cut to me freaking out. He gave me an extra 10 minutes, me freaking out for an extra 10 minutes, and then boom, finally it pops up. So off I go into that interview, and I swear to God, it was the best interview I've ever done, because I was so caught up in trying to get that computer to work. I hadn't psyched myself out. I hadn't had time to overthink what I was going to say or what I was going to do. I had prepared already. I didn't need to overthink it. So when I got in there, it was just like it was meant to be. It was fate. It was perfect. I got on so well with the guys and them with me. And I think one of the best questions I asked within that interview was, what's the culture like in BMW? Because to me, at that point, I really liked the job I was currently in. I knew I wanted more, but I was happy to stay there because I was happy as a person there. So it was really important for me to ask the question about culture, because you want to be happy in the job you go to every single day. So I can pretty much tell you that all the traits that maybe I thought were bad or were maybe not as good as other traits, like being bossy and being the dictator of SGN, actually inform my job now. So as I said, I'm very broad knowledge, so I have a decent amount of knowledge about lots of different things, but I'm not an expert in those fields, in each of those fields. Digital marketing is such a broad church that you have to really be an expert in each small element. So what I do is I manage people who are experts in those fields. So in my work, I work across pretty much all the channels, but my focus really is on our national websites, our retailer websites, PPC, and digital performance marketing. So that's kind of analytics and making sure that we've got a healthy funnel. And it's a very sales organization, so there is a lot of pressure and stress, but I thrive under that, so it doesn't bother me at all. And I can happily say that the culture did really fit. So that interview and being myself in that interview and actually getting on with people, it really was a sign that I was going to be very happy in that role. So this is our national site. And then it would be remiss of me to say that I work for BMW without showing you a really nice video of a beautiful car, because let's face it, they're beautiful. Okay, so enough about me. What's your story? So back to the importance of stories. I hope that my story resonated with some of you, but I think the important thing in managing your career path is to think about who you are uniquely and what your story is. So my 3 takeaways for today is, one of them is here. I love that in Japan there's an entire art form dedicated to repairing pottery with gold, and the flaws actually add to the beauty of the art piece. So that for me is learning to embrace my vulnerability, learning to develop life lessons from the hardships I've endured, and I hope you guys can do the same. And then also being able to understand yourself, be able to look at yourself now before you may be looking to change career or you may be starting out in your career, but to try and identify those traits that you have, that only you have, and be a truly authentic version of yourself when you do go for interviews, because you'll end up then in a place that fits you as much as you fit what they're looking for. So more than just skills, do you fit? And then my final piece is about confidence and being able to fake it till you make it, as they say. And this is a brilliant TED talk that I love to watch quite often. And basically Amy Cuddy talks about the importance of body language, and that sometimes even just how you hold yourself can trick your own brain into thinking that you are more confident than you are. So I think it's a really, really important one for anyone going to interview. Watch that before you go and adopt some of the things that she advises, and that it's really, really good.